ahead and start with introduction of the board members here, starting to my left.
Dave Allred, Council, City of Clearwater.
Renee Flowers, Pinellas County Commissioner.
Deborah Fix-Sanders, St. Petersburg City Council.
Vince Cox, Pinellas County.
Thank you all, and Brad Miller, CEO, as always.
Hello. Morning.
All right, so our first item here is public comment. I don't see anybody online, but if you would like to make a comment, you can dial in. The phone number is 415-655-0002. Meeting ID 2305-417-0959. Did we have any, was there anybody in the lobby for public comment? No?
No one in the lobby for public comment.
Okay. So in that we don't have any public comment at this point, we'll move on to our first informational item, which is the Psta brand refresh. I don't know if Whitney's,
I don't know.
she was here earlier.
She was here. Hopefully, Cassandra, could you go first, maybe? And we'll call Whitney, try to find where Whitney is.
We can certainly switch it up as long as the PowerPoint presentations wind up shifting properly. So we'll move on to the grant application and successes with Cassandra Borchers. Good morning, Cassandra.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Pleasure to be here and in person. Periodically, we bring to you an idea of what we're applying for grants. Often we'll bring you the grant application when it's already approved or when we're about to spend the money. But every so often we like to give you a sneak peek into what we have applied for and been successful at, what we're currently waiting for responses for, because it's some really interesting stuff and I'm really excited about it, and then what we're planning for the future. Next slide, please. So as part of our annual grant strategy, we sit down with the multidisciplinary group across the agency, and we look at the plans that you have already approved. So long-term investment plans like the Sustainable Strategic Plan form the basis of what we consider our grant shopping list. You might also see these lists in what we put together for the Florida Department of Transportation under the Transit Development Plan. And so the projects that we apply for the Florida Department of Transportation have to be in this plan. And then, of course, on an annual basis, you'll hear from our grants department, the finance department, on the capital improvement program. And so while a lot of those projects that are on the capital improvement program are what we call formula grants, which come to us based on the ridership in the population and numbers we report to the federal government. What I'm going to be talking about today are the discretionary grants. And so those that we are competing for dollars across the country and across the state for. So we review our needs, both in terms of programmed, things that we might already be planning to spend on, but might be very competitive. And we anticipate what the programs might be at the federal level based on a legislative discussion, past programs, and we usually come up with a few other projects just in case they come up with another program that we haven't thought of just yet. Over time, we will complete and refine cost estimates and most importantly, secure a local match. So a lot of times the local match will come from Psta through the Capital Reserve Fund, but that is not an endless source of money. And so we also look for partnerships with cities, with counties, and other agencies, including the Florida Department of Transportation, that can form that local, what we would consider a local match to any federal project. These then become the basis for your legislative advocacy priorities. Many of those grant programs do require not only a great application and project justification, plus a financial plan, they also require some strong advocacy, especially at the federal level. Next slide, please. So I just have a couple of recent wins. Now, don't get excited just yet. This is an example of pre-planning our match. So we did win from the Florida Department of Transportation as a match to our Grays grant, which is also in here later, a $2.3 million grant in fiscal year 23, and we will be able to leverage that into federal dollars. So we are able to use the land value and the contributions from the city and PSTA to leverage this grant, and then we take that whole mess, and we tell the federal government that is our collective local match. And this makes us very competitive at the federal level, because not only do we have a local contribution and local, what we would consider local, but also that state support for a project like this. And so you will see this in the FDOT work program, if you're up late one night and want to look, in fiscal year 23, and we'll be excited to bring the joint participation agreement to the board for approval in the next state fiscal year. Next slide, please. Another project that we recently won that you may not know anything about, because we do apply for some grants that are pretty interesting, and some of them are not necessarily huge, and they don't require you to come to the board, but they are part of our budget. And so we had a new partner with the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council. We're recreating another project that has been done in other parts of the county, and we are able to leverage our Mobility on Demand program in order to provide new riders, new rides. And so these are for people who have intellectual, developmental, or other disabilities, and we will use these funds to support their services through our Mobility on Demand program. And so this is an unusual partner for us, something a little bit different than a transportation agency, but this is why some other agencies see transportation as a solution, and we're looking for those agencies to partner with as well. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to go through a little bit of the applications that we have open and that we're waiting for news about. So we did apply for our solar system, which you may have heard about, the solar infrastructure project. This is for our solar panels and the charging infrastructure that we need in order to support our electric bus fleet. This is a request through Congressman Charlie Crist for $6 million, and you'll see that the match is toll revenue credits. This is not actually cash for us, but it is something that comes from the state that allows us to show a softer match, but still qualifies us for the application. And so we do expect news about this very shortly, as soon as those bills get through the Congress. Next slide, please. Again, another creative way to leverage our state dollars. As you know, we have this little project called the Sunrider. It has a very important station at 22nd Street, and we've been working through our transit-oriented development project to see how to best connect that station to the surrounding neighborhoods. As part of that, we talked to the Florida Department of Transportation, and they were able to give us about $20,000 in a commuter assistance program in order to do a mobility study on 22nd Street. We then talked to the city of St. Petersburg, and they gave us an additional $10,000 to match our $10,000 in staff time. Again, not new cash, but definitely something that's important. We are then taking those partnerships and asking the Federal Transit Administration to grant us $760,000 under the Areas of Persistent Poverty grant. This would allow us to work with the South Side CRA, and we did have a great conversation with the CRA director, Rick Smith, about what he needs to use the monies from the CRA to effectively provide mobility within his CRA district. And so he had already planned to have a fairly large project in looking at how to prioritize his funds. Now, if we win this grant, we'll be able to help him do that and help him really engage the community in a very robust discussion about how to use his funds. So again, these are planning dollars. They are very significant, and even if we won half of this, we could still have a very robust conversation with the community. However, if we do not win, which is unlikely because I think this is a really good application, we will still do the mobility study on 22nd Street. And so this is one of those things where this is a win-win no matter what happens. Next slide, please.
Do you want questions at the end or as we go?
Are you okay if we take some questions
Yeah,
as we go, since there's a
interrupt.
lot of
Yes,
material?
please, go ahead.
Okay.
You're, oh, you just turned your mic off.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, it was red, so,
There you go.
thank you. First of all, again, thank you to Brad for, working with me when we had a discussion, if you will, at the Carter G. Woodson in the Gardens with community people, and myself and Brad was there and others to talk about, transportation mobility along that corridor and in areas that are underserved in a number of other arenas, and what this added transportation piece would do for them when you're talking about employment opportunities that are in the gateway area, whatever, they can't get there timely, you know, or they can't get there at all because they don't have a car. So this is really good discussion. I would like to, if you could, just make sure that when they're having, when Rick Smith is setting up community meetings, if we can be noticed, I'd love to attend. Because as I shared with Brad, some years ago, Route 7 and 8 were the routes that took up the corridor
Right.
for this almost a 6 square mile area. And then, of course, the transfer station then was at Williams Park. So you either transferred on 3, 5, or 36 to get almost anywhere throughout the city. Of course, all that moved to Tyrone. But I was sharing with him that it is some difficulty now with the transportation not being as frequent as it used to be some years ago, to be able to catch the bus in this area. So that is a very good pickup, if you will, very good conversation. And I would love to just know whenever he sets up his community conversations or meetings, I would love to be there and be a part of that, just continuing on, like, because we promised the people that we were talking with that day that we would keep the dialogue going, and that dialogue would lead to some kind of action. And so I'd love to be able to kind of maybe reconvene that group, and, you know, invite them as well to come to this event so they could hear the plans that are going on and whatnot. But I do think this is really, really good for this community. The other thing I want to say about the mobility study, because right now, a lot of the lots that are vacant will be filled. You have the Carter G. Woodson that's coming, so that's going to increase traffic. You have 22 South Food Hall that just kind of rebranded, reopened, and is really getting excellent traction. But you still have some large swaths where things are coming. They're not there yet. So any mobility study that he does right now, the numbers may not adequately reflect what will be there. You know what I'm saying?
So I think you're gonna get even more excited about this opportunity, because these are planning dollars, right, that are designed to create another shopping list so that we can apply for additional grants and the city can apply for additional grants. And what we would do is use this money that you see on the slide to work with the community and the Florida Department of Transportation to see how can we increase the investment, right? So we have talked to Beatrice Farrell at the Deuces Live about this, and I do have staff members who are regularly attending those board meetings to make sure that we stay connected with the community. So whether we do a $40,000 study just on 22nd Street, or we do an $800,000 study for the entire CRA, we are committed to mobility in that community and making sure not only can they get to the Sunrunner, but they can get to all parts of the community that we serve.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? I actually have a question, so, about this. So we have the $40,000 that we're going to be moving forward with on the mobility part, and we're asking for $760 more that's for fiscal year '23. So does the $40,000 wait until 2023 to start doing that, or are we going to start using those funds up in anticipation or regardless of the fact that we're not sure we're going to get the $760?
We will wait until we know if we have received the federal dollars. Once we know if we receive the federal dollars, we will do the mobility study either of that particular corridor or the entire area. That doesn't mean that we're not doing anything in that area right now. We are working with the community on the transit-oriented development project. So this would be sort of an offshoot of that, and could either be small or very large, depending on how it's funded.
Okay, thank you.
Do you know when they're gonna announce the winners?
They do not have a timeline for the announcement, but it was just submitted in August. So it usually does take a few months
Yeah.
for us. So I would hope by the end of the year we will know. But either way, we have been in the community, we will be in through this project or others.
I do have
Yes, Commissioner Fig Sanders.
Okay, thank you. I made a note concurring what Commissioner Flowers said to get in contact with Rick Smith from the city of St. Petersburg so I can kind of stay in tune with what we're doing, especially in regards to the South St. Petersburg CRA, because I'm still waiting on the impact study from those dollars. And one of the things that strikes me every time when we're having conversation, when we say community and we mention one person's name, that is not the community. And so I agree that certain people need to be in the conversations, but those same conversations need to be expanded to the community.
Right.
So the Deuces Live Board is not the only board that addresses African-American issues in South St. Pete. You have other stakeholders that have vested interests, if not more, in what we utilize these dollars for. So I would love to see that conversation kind of acquiesce into other areas as well, and I'll be glad to help provide you some of those contacts for that. But I just like to always remind people that you do not have one person that represents an entire community. And so again, thank you. So I'm excited for this because transportation really has been an issue for that area for a very long time. Thank you so much.
Let me do this. I do have a list of about 20 organizations. I'll make sure that you get that list and see who we're missing and make sure that we have the right contacts.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate your help very much. Ready for the next slide? So we're back in Clearwater, talking about the Clearwater Multimodal Transit Center. We have advanced the National Environmental Policy Act clearance on a site in downtown Clearwater, and we have applied for the RAISE grant. You may have known this as a build grant or a ARA grant, but this is we applied for the maximum you could apply for, which is $25 million. This did not create an 80% match for us. It was a little bit less than 80%, but we'll be filling in the gaps of that match with, again, the land value from the city, Psta, the FDOT intermodal grant, which I mentioned, as well as funds from Forward Pinellas that are specialized, locally determined federal dollars, but will be part of this project. And so this application in statute needs to be announced by November 22nd. And so hopefully we will know before Thanksgiving whether we have this funding or not. And again, I think this being our third time applying for this funding source and knowing we have an exceptional application and exceptional partnerships, I expect good news. Next slide, please. And so many of the grants that I've shown you so far are capital grants. There are, on occasion, operational grants that we can apply for, and this is through the Florida Department of Transportation and their Service Development Grant Program. They have always been interested in the Sunrunner and investing in regional services, and they have already committed to us $2.7 million to help us with the operations of the Sunrunner. This is a 50-50 match for the department, which is pretty much all of their grant programs are 50-50 match. But we didn't quite get to their full 50% by policy, and so we said we would like you to complete that 50%. Here's an ask for another $1.8 million. We included in that ask some additional dollars for public engagement and public awareness of the service in addition to the service operations itself. And so we are expecting very shortly, I asked again yesterday about when we were going to find out if we had this additional dollars. Things are a little bit slower than we wanted them to be in Tallahassee, but I feel confident that we will have some very good news about their support for the operations of the Sunrunner. Next slide, please. So those are all the ones that we have, I'd say about half of the applications that we have put in. I do have another set of small ones that I didn't bring for you today because I would probably be talking until Thursday morning at 9 a.m. If I told you all of the things that we had applied for. So there are two that I'd like to talk about that are our proposed applications. Recently, the Notice of Funding Opportunity came out for the Bus and Bus Facilities Grant Program, which you may know as also the low and no emission. Sometimes a low and no emission program is nested within the bus and bus facilities. But this is a highly competitive grant program at the federal level, and we will be applying for 12 electric buses, plus the charging equipment, plus 2 en route chargers that use our induction wave technology. We expect this to be highly competitive, and at this point, what we're seeing with the budget is that we are trying to be very conservative about the budget and the match that we put together, and so we will be requesting toll revenue credit match from the Florida Department of Transportation as our match for this 1-year purchase of the next 5 years of the electric bus that you saw from Debbie and Henry last month. Next slide, please.
Can you do me a favor and explain the toll revenue credits, how those work?
So it's the toll, there are toll revenues that are at the state level, and they do not come to us, they come to the state, but they are all money that's already been used, but because because of how they work, we're able to tap into this already used funding and say, we're gonna use that portion of it for a match. So it's not they're not giving us the cash, but the Florida Department of Transportation has already spent it somewhere else in their system.
Okay, so it's just like a phantom bookkeeping entry.
It is. It's
as
like a
match.
unicorn.
It's a unicorn. We don't like to use them, even though they're technically eligible matches, because
It's not real money.
it's not real money. It's like this money over there, it's like I tell my son, well, I've purchased, I purchased an iPad, pen, like a pen for you, and I want you to reimburse me for it, but you can reimburse me by mowing the lawn. So
Understood.
there's no exchange of money, but I end up paying for the whole pen, as the federal government.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I actually do understand it better than,
Okay.
yeah. Sorry, Commissioner Albrecht.
Okay, well, since we're talking about that, what is the story, since we're ordering 12 new buses over a period of time, we're going from diesel buses to electric, is there a possibility to get carbon credits? What exactly, how does that fit in there? I mean, the way it was explained to me, there's a lot of money in that, and it's getting more every year.
I've talked to some other people about it. It seems like it's a possibility down the road. Stay tuned. At least if we're looking at this concept called carbon credits, which especially for the solar panel project that we're putting in at Psta, maybe even for the electric buses, where power companies, it's mostly utility companies, will put in money and get a credit, and then we get the revenue.
Well, there's
to help
companies that
offset.
buy those, and then that's how we get the revenue.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yes,
how it works.
to offset their carbon emissions. People are doing this. As far as I can tell so far, in the carbon credits that have been issued, it's not going to be an enormous amount of money until we start maybe getting a large number of electric buses here. But we'll see. Stay tuned.
Yeah, okay.
It's interesting.
Can I ask a question, though? So, because I know we had this conversation, and when we're talking about the increasing our fleet, and we're focusing on buses. But one of the questions I have, we also have PSTA cars, we also have PSTA vans in our fleet. Are we looking at even addressing those sustainability needs in regards to using electrical vehicles with those fleet vehicles as well? Because to me, it would be a good look that we're covering all grounds and converting to electrical automobiles. Has that been a conversation, and me being new, I'm asking, but has that been a conversation moving forward as well?
It is a great question. It has. All of our automobile purchases are purchased off a state contract, and all we buy are hybrid vehicles. And maybe, I'm not sure if there's a state of Florida scheduled for 100% electric, but it's a good idea. We should look into that. We did put in our procurement for our mobility programs. You got extra credit if you proposed more efficient or cleaner vehicles. At least right now, none of the vendors that we selected, to my knowledge, have those. They're still coming out with some of the larger vans. They don't really make those yet in all electric, but they're starting to hit the market, so I think that'll be in the future too.
Okay, glad to hear that, because you said it was some of the ones we hadn't selected, but we're not known whether or not there's any available or not.
In the sort of in like the PSA access vans that you see around town, I don't think those come in a Henry's not here, all electric version yet.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But the cars, yeah, that's a good idea.
No, I was just thinking, since, with the county at our last, meeting before last, we rolled out that we're electrifying our fleet of cars. And, I posted pictures of the 2 vehicles that they brought for us to kind of get in and drive in and whatnot. So maybe piggybacking on, that purchase contract, if there was consideration, because I know you can, help reduce the cost when you piggyback on someone else purchasing them, but, for us, that's something we've been working on, and, when I got in the car, I cut it on, I did not even know the thing was on, I was like, because some electric, you still can hear a little something, nothing, and when I tell you roomy, all the bells and whistles that you need, trunk space, they were really nice, so.
Do you know, does the county purchase off of the state, or do they do their own purchase?
We use the state purchasing list, cause you get better bang for your buck. I would need to go back in, and I can do that before I leave today. I can go back in and pull up the item and share with you, who we purchased those from, cause it was quite a few. But it was for the Board of County Commissioners, as far as all the offices that affiliate with that piece. We've not yet moved into, some of the other departments. That will come, cause it's being done in phases because of money, but.
Okay.
But they were really, staff seemed to be really excited about it. I did mention in that meeting as well that since we're having to look at charging stations, you guys are looking at charging stations, maybe that's something we can all kind of partner on for any future installation of those charging stations. If they're compatible, I don't know if the hookups are different or, whatnot, but if they're compatible, we could probably also save money in that regard. Rather than PSTA, putting in 30, we're putting in 30, maybe we could collaborate on that as well, save some money and still provide the purpose. I'm not sure, but.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I wrote down, are all of the charging stations, would they be compatible?
So, for the most part, they are compatible.
Yeah.
Brad and I both have electrical vehicles as well, so.
Making me
And if
feel
not,
bad up here.
If not, there's adapters for that. But I think one of the concerns, at least initially, that I have with electrifying the PSTA access is just range. And the ability to then recharge those vehicles and get them going. So the hybrid's kind of that middle, it's that middle path that allows us to do both while we're working on range, while we're working on infrastructure, because we can't just,
Run out of
we can't even get cereal these days because of shipping and issues. So getting some of these other items in hand, they're gonna take some time, especially as everyone's looking at doing this sort of thing. So I'm absolutely all in favor of all electric, but there are some issues from a operational standpoint to work out, to make that
Right.
work.
Yeah, and hybrid does have its benefits.
Yeah.
Because I drove a hybrid, a Prius when they first came out. When I worked at Gulf Coast, I would drive down to South Florida. And so, on Alligator Alley, there's no gas station.
Right.
So if I had run out, of electricity, I would have been in trouble. So yes, they do have their value. But I was just sharing, what we're trying to do to move towards that 100% clean energy process.
Well, and there is obviously we have the aspirational goal of what we'd like to achieve as an agency. And then there's the reality of how do we get from where we are to there, and that's gonna be a little bit of all of these different things along the way. So, but collaborating and sharing, those costs and services makes
Because
sense.
at Wawa, they have, at least the one on the south side, they have like 10 Tesla charging stations, and then they have maybe 3 or 4 regular electric charging stations. And I see people connected frequently when I'm down that way.
Yeah, you need an adapter for the Tesla ones, but
Oh, well, I don't have a Tesla.
Yeah.
sore subject.
I'm sorry.
No.
What is it?
No, not a problem.
So, I love this conversation.
Oh, I'm sorry, we just
Henry would
talked
be
about
so
it.
proud of you all for listening to him over the years talk about hybrids and as an evolution of electric, and I certainly think that we've presented enough information to you all to know that 12 buses is going to just make a small portion of our fleet replacement, but it is a critical step for us to move in that direction. So my last project that I'd like to talk about is a proposed application. We had intended to put in this application this fiscal year, and in support of what's happening at the regional level, at the Cross Bay Ferry, who was also putting an application. In addition to us having a weaker match for this project, we decided to throw our support to the Cross Bay Ferry and hope they have a very successful application to the Passenger Ferry Grant Program this year, and we will have plenty of time to solidify the match and the partnership that we need in order to have a great application next year.
And thank you for doing that. Thank you.
So thank you to Commissioner Cox, who ended the Finance Committee a little bit early today. Just as the YouTube of that meeting was finishing, I was watching, on comes the TDC. And be excited to know that they had a very interesting conversation today about funding for transportation through TDC dollars. And so I will be rewatching that meeting because I think there's some really great tidbits and some partnerships that I think that we could enhance with the Tourist Development Council for applications like the Clearwater Ferry. And so it was overall a very positive conversation at the TDC, and I hope that we'll be able to use that funding as a match for the Ferry Grant Program. We'll just have to work through that partnership and see how that might be an opportunity for us. So thank you so much. It's been always an interesting conversation when we talk about the grants and the projects, and we do very much appreciate your support and your engagement in these projects. Thanks.
Thank you, Cassandra. Any additional questions, comments? All right, thank you so much. We're actually going to take a step back to item 3A, the PSTA brand refresh with Whitney Fox.
Yes, hello, sorry for throwing off the agenda. Thanks, great job, Cassandra, with your presentation. Let me just pull up my notes real quick. Okay, hi, I am, for those of you who don't know, Whitney Fox, the Director of Communications and Marketing for PSTA. And I'm excited to talk to you today about our PSTA brand refresh initiative. Next slide, please. So I'd like to take us back to start with a fun blast from the past. Back when we were called the Central Pinellas Transit Authority, back in the 1970s. I won't ask anyone to raise their hand if they were around during this time. But in case anyone missed the 70s, here in Pinellas County, this is what our vehicles looked like back then. Next slide, please. Then in the 80s, PSTA was formed, and so was this awesome retro logo. You can notice the orange PSTA logo and 1980s bus design for our vehicles. Next slide, please. Then in 2005, PSTA went through a major rebranding where you'll see today's logo was created, and you will find the swoosh on the bus design on our older diesel vehicles, as well as on all of our branded materials such as PowerPoint presentations, business cards, etc. So this is kind of where we are today when it comes to the blue logo and branding of PSTA. Next slide. You'll notice from the previous slide where the logo is located can sometimes get covered by advertisements, which we've discussed before. So this is just an example of our past design of our vehicles and how sometimes the logos can get covered. And just to give you an idea of how that works, our logos are actually almost like a decal sticker. And then when we put an advertisement on top of it, it's like putting a sticker on top of a sticker. So you'll notice a lot of vehicles in our fleet, sometimes the logos are a little bit faded or damaged, and that's just from constantly removing a sticker off of a sticker, and it's hard to keep up and maintain. Next slide, please. So here's an example, like I mentioned, of a faded PSTA logo from all of that wear and tear. Next slide. Then we received, I believe in 2009, our very first hybrid vehicles. We're talking a lot about hybrid and electric today. Our hybrid vehicles came in 2009. We were very excited, and we tweaked our design a little bit and did this gray bus design with kind of a green swoosh, and we called these our smart buses because they were hybrid. That was very exciting at the time. And then from there, you'll notice on the next slide, the decals on the window, same situation. Because of the advertisements that are placed on the side of the buses, the decals come off the windows very easily when you remove an advertisement off of the side of the vehicle. So a lot of times those will get damaged and need to be replaced or repaired, or sometimes it doesn't make sense to maintain it if we're just going to put a new advertisement right on the vehicle again. So you'll see that can sometimes happen. And then the next slide is kind of where we are today with all of these issues with maintenance and damage to the vehicles. We've gone to almost kind of like a silver bullet of a look for our vehicles with just a simple PSTA logo on it. So this is some of our newer vehicles in the fleet and what they look like. Next slide, please. So you'll notice we've had a lot of positive media stories about PSTA, and even some of the images that the news outlets use when representing Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority will feature some of our vehicles, and they aren't always in the best of shape. They might be in between advertisements being put on the vehicle. There might be a faded PSTA logo, and there always seems to be that there isn't a consistent look to the vehicles themselves. So because of all of these reasons, we believe it is time for a little brand refresh, a little PSTA facelift, if you will, and we're very excited. So next slide, please. We are going to bring sexy back. So this is one of our vehicles from 1963, and what we love about this design is it has that kind of like retro beach vibe going to it with the horizontal stripes. And being a peninsula on a peninsula and having some of the world's best beaches and best towns here in Pinellas County, we feel like our transit should represent the community that we serve. So we wanted to move in this direction and kind of make it a more fun and inviting look to our vehicles. So what we did is come up with the next design. We decided to have a new refreshed look for our fleet. So the darker blue in our PSTA logo has been kind of prominent in a lot of our branding materials in the past couple decades. And we've decided we want to take the teal from the logo and kind of put that as the lead in our major look for the brand refresh. So we met with Henry, our maintenance director, and we talked to him about what are some of the issues that him and his team have been facing over the past couple decades when it comes to the vehicles, maintaining them, the advertisements, and what can we do to make it easier for them to maintain a good look for our fleet. So you'll notice here, we've got that horizontal look of the colors and the stripes. So it's a very simple design, nothing too intricate that would be too hard for a maintenance team to repair should they need to. We've also moved the PSTA logo into a location that's going to be easier to maintain and not be covered as often with advertisements. And you'll notice there's no decals on the windows, which will be great for people who are riding the vehicle, would like to see outside, and also not to worry about any decals being pulled off in the future. So we created this slick, clean, minimal look of horizontal lines that should be easy to maintain going forward. Next slide, please. So we think that the new design really represents a brighter, sunnier, and more welcoming look for PSTA and our fleet that we think we would all enjoy seeing out on the roads as we're driving through Pinellas County. Next slide, please. So again, we're going to go from this look, which is our current, or what I'm going to call our old fleet, where it's kind of a little bit of a modge podge of different vehicles and styles. Next slide. To our new fleet, where whether it's an electric vehicle, hybrid, whatever it may be, they're all going to look similar. They're all going to look like they're part of one transit agency, and you're going to be able to recognize a PSTA bus out on the road. Now, we're not stopping there. This is just the vehicle design. We're hoping to implement a new refresh throughout all of our branded materials, such as our letterhead. So you'll notice we're going away from the swoosh that is kind of takes up a lot of space, to more of a minimal, sleek, modern design with the horizontal lines for our letterhead. And then even for our PowerPoint templates, we're going to make those, again, bring them into the 2020s, make those a little bit more modern. And not only will our business cards get a new facelift and design, but we're also adding in keywords that represent PSTA, such as sustainability, equity, and mobility. And our email signatures, we're even giving a refresh to, and we are also going to include options for people to include their pronouns in email signatures, should they choose to do so, as well as our envelopes, mailing labels, and again, this is just the beginning of how we're going to implement this new refreshed look and design throughout our materials. Next slide, and you can go to the next one. So how do we plan on making this a reality? So as I'm sure you're aware, Henry, our Director of Maintenance, has a plan of purchasing 60 new buses over the next 5 years. So the first plan is those next buses that come in have this look and design. Those are going to be our 2 new electric buses. And from there, every new bus that comes in must come in this branded look and the new brand refresh. So we would slowly but surely, as we get those new buses, begin to add to that collection. So in addition, we're looking at our CIP, identifying savings on other projects so that we can repaint some of our newer buses in our current fleet, so that we can hopefully retrofit some vehicles from 2018, 2019, and 2020, including, of course, the electric vehicles we already have. So slowly but surely, we will create a new uniform look that will build a more positive sentiment in the community when it comes to interacting with our buses and the PSTA brand overall. And that's it. I'll take any questions that you might have.
Just a comment.
Yes, go
Commissioner
ahead.
Flowers?
Hi, I think this is great. Just when you get to the business card one, the new business card, that's a lot of white space that's empty right there. So I don't know if you all were thinking about maybe putting something else over there. It
Brad's
just,
picture? A picture of Brad?
if he wants. But I love the backside with sustainability, equity, mobility. You're
Sure.
talking about who we are, what we're doing, where we're focused. I love that. That's just me, because Deb and I both kind of do some party planning and putting together stuff. And that's just what I would call too much white space. Yeah,
Sure.
so
And
I don't know if you
looking
could
at it
think
on
of
a-
something cute to put over there, maybe bring that PSTA logo down and expand it or something, just,
No, thank you for the feedback, yeah. Looking at it on a white PowerPoint slide too probably doesn't help with the minimal slide design that we have here to show off the ad or the marketing. But yes, the idea being more clean, minimalist is kind of the vibe that we're going for, so that it has a clean look and to not be too scared of white space.
Just mine.
No, thank you.
But everything else, I really do like. I
Great.
will tell you, I got a little scared when you were, when you showed the older bus
Okay, I was
and
wondering.
and we were going back to that, and I was like, that's not a good memory for those of us that are African American
That
that was
was
sitting on
gonna
the
be
back
my
of this
comment.
bus.
That was
Yeah, I
gonna be
remember
my
that.
comment.
So I was
Yeah.
like, woo, but then after you showed, I was like, thank you, God. So I just want you to know, thank
Definitely
you,
didn't mean it in that way. No, absolutely.
because I would be like, no, girl, you can't do that.
Listen, that was gonna be my comment. I wrote it right down. I was like, 1963, there was nothing sexy about buses in the black community back then.
Yeah, we had to
Absolutely.
sit back
Um,
yonder.
So that was my concern, and that was my question I was going to address in regards, because, again, thank you, Commissioner Flowers.
Definitely not bringing anything socially back, that's for sure.
Okay, because my question was gonna be, who in your group said that that was sexy? But, okay, but thank you so much.
But I do like the turquoise colors,
Great.
the hint of water, the thought of water, where beach community tourism.
Exactly.
Brighten it up, you know, make it light. I like that.
Well, and also just to provide, dignity to our riders as well, that as they board our vehicles, that they have something that looks appealing to them as well. Mhm.
You know, I know, I'm sorry, real quick. I was at an event the other day and I hadn't seen Don Master in a long time, so we had a chance to chit chat. And we were talking about transportation, and I was talking about, just trying to get more people to use transportation. It's not an ugly word, that there are other communities that this is how they travel and they drive their car on the weekend, And he said that. He said, yeah, we've got to just make sure that people know that public transportation is a good thing. So it's nice to have someone like that who is consistently in touch with organizations that are moving down here trying to get permitting and planning and zoning, so that, I feel good knowing that he's carrying that conversation with those companies to say, yeah, we have public transportation and they're doing X, Y, Z. So just wanted to let you
good.
all know that that was good coming from him.
Commissioner Fix-Sanders?
Okay, one more thing that I noticed, and I guess, like I said, Commissioner Flowers, it's the event planner in me. Looking at the email signatures, there's no consistency with the phone numbers. Are we gonna use parentheses or not? And on the, where it says Brad Miller, he and him, that will be an option for all executives to add?
That'll be an option for all employees. If they would like to include their pronouns, we just wanted to make sure we included a design where they could do so, but it's not
Sounds good.
mandatory.
Okay, okay, excellent. But yeah, just making a point of, I'm visual when it comes to business cards and things like that. I understand the clean sheet look, but, the consistency on the phone numbers, are we gonna
Right,
do-
so for the old version, we did use parentheses for the area code, but the new version would not include
Okay.
them.
Okay, then just the
Yeah.
dots. Okay, thank you.
No
That's
worries.
not my number, by the way, don't take that.
Yeah, because I was gonna call you like.
Any additional comments or questions? No? Okay, I have a couple. Since we're talking about the business cards and the email signature, just stylistically, the email signatures have like the office and cell phone indicator on the left, and the business cards have them on the right. So it's just not consistent across the two.
Sure.
But really, that was a minor issue for me. The bigger question I had is, what are we doing about bus stop signage, bus shelters? While the buses move around, those shelters are part of what people see on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
So are we looking at the same sort of refresh for those?
So in an ideal world, I'm sure you know me, Josh, I would love to refresh everything all at once. But due to limited budget, obviously, we're just taking it baby steps of what can we realistically do first and foremost, what's going to have the biggest impact, what's low cost for change, like doesn't cost us much to change the email signature, for example.
Right.
But eventually, we want to work towards implementing this throughout the whole agency, including the bus stop signage. And that's something that I think that we will be discussing looking forward of when and how we could do that and what that would look like.
So I think as far as this presentation goes, it would be great to see
Next steps.
what those would look like. So it's part of what we're trying to get to, because it is a big impact statement for our community. And then the second comment I would just have is the slide that you do have showing the older bus, when it goes to presentation in the future, I don't know if we even need that, right?
Sure.
It clearly has different meanings for different people, and
I think that's a valid point.
it wasn't necessary for the presentation to be as impactful as it was.
Great.
So.
Thank you for that.
And I definitely, and you and I have had conversations about bus shelters in particular. I think if, as we move forward, having that being part of this and knowing that that's what we're getting to will give us a more cohesive package.
Absolutely, and that's something that we've been talking about as well. If we have many different designs when it comes to our bus shelters, and the newer versions that we do have are still in our current PSTA colors. So I think that it's just, how are we gonna keep that consistent as we continue to add shelters or update shelters? How do we keep that consistency with what those look like, or what changes would we need to make in the future to them?
Well, and as we, I know we're in the throes of the Shine Mural Festival. I don't know when we get anybody up here to take our new refresh and get it on the, get a mural on the building here that can help paint that picture, literally.
Sure.
Interesting idea.
I love that idea. I'd love to put a mural in the building. Maybe we can talk about that, Brad.
We are making a new effort in this fiscal year to make, change out more of the old brown shelters that are still out there. With the new kind of turquoise, kind of in this color scheme, look. So hopefully, maybe by the end of this year or sometime soon, the brown ones will be gone.
Well, and I'm not, I mean, obviously it also ties in with the Sunrunner color scheme.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure as development continues, I'm under the impression that there's a requirement for certain developers, at least in St. Pete, to put money towards art of a certain size. So we may be able to, if there's a bus shelter in their property, like use that on our shelter, so we can use some of the funds that they're paying for something else towards that, as opposed to them being separate. I don't know if that's you know, equally possible, but
Sure.
it's at least worth an ask.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm very excited for you to see, as the Sunrunner Shelters come along, what those are gonna look like as far as the art installations.
And I just want to tell y'all, I was in Gainesville for a Florida Association of Counties meeting. And the place where we had one of our meetings, we had to drive like on the other side of Gainesville. And I passed some of their purported shelters. I felt so proud. I was so proud. Just to see a shelter, two wooden, not even a wooden bench like how we used to have back in the day. Just two wooden like stool dowels, no covering, and it was raining this particular day, my last day there. No covering, no nothing. And when I thought about all the apartment complexes I was passing, that had students living in them that were going to school, some may not have cars. As I drove by, I said, I am so proud of PSTA. Because I remember years ago when we didn't have adequate shelter, and started doing that, you know, because people want to get to work and whatnot, and they deserve to have covering and safety.
Yeah.
But, so, please know that, you know, when you go places, you all probably do it too, check out their transportation stuff, and then think about ours. I am really glad to be PSTA.
I concur.
I'm pretty sure that's why Brad travels, like I think he travels just to see
Just-
other
just-
transit.
Just to ride the buses, yeah.
Well, we'll have to take that ride, so you can tell them a little something. Huh? 'Cause it was
That's gonna be your next
so
presentation,
sad.
actually.
All right, Whitney, thank you so much.
Thank
Great
you.
job, great
Thank
job.
you so much.
And, okay, now skipping ahead, we're moving to, Heather has our PSTA benchmarking update. I imagine she is virtually.
Hi.
Yeah,
think
hey
that-
Heather, maybe I can introduce this. Speaking of traveling, so some of you may know that PSTA is a member of what's called the American Bus Benchmarking Group. And benchmarking is, of course, the practice of comparing data on your activities, your operations, to other similar cities, and in a positive way, in a way that helps everyone get better. So if we're doing something fabulous here in Pinellas County, we go and present on that. If we learn that something is happening great in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or Los Angeles, then we can take from there. And this is exactly what we were just talking about going to other cities. And in the PowerPoint, Heather's going to show you where all the different cities are. But this is something that we do in a big way at PSTA, and then use this to kind of make sure that we're constantly working on all activities that we're engaged in, whether it's bus shelters or on-time performance or cost or anything like that, and trying to keep keep improving things. So Heather's gonna give you a presentation on sort of some hot topics, like the response to COVID, and some of the projects that I know you heard us working on, and how those are going compared to other cities around the country. Heather?
Yes, and someone, yep, that's perfect. So as you can see here, these are all of the different agencies across the United States that participate in the American Benchmarking Group. And it's really awesome. They actually have a forum online, and if we want to ask questions, we can ask questions, and everyone's very responsive, very participatory. So that's just one of the benefits. Next slide, please. And as Brad mentioned, our participation in ABBG has many benefits. One of the major activities includes reporting a lot of data to ABBG, which then provides information back on how we compare to other agencies across a number of key performance indicators. Each agency gets individualized information that we at PSTA use to understand which areas we are doing well at and which ones we need to work on. So this graphic here shows where we are lower performing and where we are higher performing. So if you look at the top, we have a rank of 18 for driver training. So that's one of the areas we're low performing. And then as we go down to the bottom, peak fleet utilization, which is how many buses we have on the street at peak during peak hours. We have a #1 ranking. So we're doing very well in those areas. Next slide, please. So we take these rankings seriously, and we work to develop strategies to improve performance in the lowest performing areas. We put them on the scorecard. You can see right here, the big red circle is showing the scorecard. It says annual improvement in key ABBG group metrics. And so we do work actively to improve upon our goal is at least half of the metrics each year. And some of that work includes contacting the agencies that might be higher performing in those areas and learning what strategies do they use to be high performing. Next slide, please. And so I did not attend the workshop held last month in Salt Lake City, but I have reviewed all of the presentations that were given at that workshop, and of common themes arose during the member presentations. And these include service changes and ridership impacts from COVID, operator shortages and hiring campaigns, fleet electrification, fare payment upgrades, new facilities and premium service expansion, and new mobility and microtransit services. Next slide, please. So this is a slide showing ridership recovery based on pre-COVID ridership. PSTA shown, actually originally it was a red arrow, now it's over here on the left. SP is the code name for PSTA, has recovered more of its ridership when compared to the other agencies. All of the other bars on this graph and the little letters at the bottom show the other ABBG agencies, and they are anonymous, which is required by the Royal College of London that runs the ABBG. But that's okay, because what we care about is how we are doing relative to others. And our ridership likely has fared better than the others due to a large service industry here, more transit dependent riders, and PSTA's efforts to make sure through service changes that we're matching service to as the demand has shifted during COVID. Next slide, please. So as I have mentioned earlier, well, I didn't mention actually, PSTA currently has a shortage of operators that's affected service delivery. This is an industry-wide, nationwide challenge, which has resulted in hiring campaigns, pay increases, and new incentives offered by agents across the country. PSTA itself has ramped up its hiring efforts, and we currently have the first ever super class of 21 new bus operator trainings. That's in session now, and it started at the end of September. Next slide, please. And many ABBG members have been increasing the size of their electric bus fleets, some of which are doing so for sustainability purposes and others due to state requirements. California, for instance, is probably 5 to 10 years ahead of us because they're not able to purchase diesel buses due to laws there. Capital Metro in Austin passed a referendum recently that directs some of their existing property tax to fund transit expansion, and this includes the purchase of 197 electric buses. Next slide, please.
That's a lot of buses.
A lot of buses, a lot of electric buses. And as you heard earlier, or I guess the finance committee heard with our electric bus procurement, it's just easier and easier to get buses now here too. Another common theme was the transition from paper mag stripe fares to smart cards and mobile fare payment. Of course, PSTA now joins these other agencies, some of which are shown here, with our transition to Flamingo fares. Next slide. So I mentioned Capital Metro in Austin earlier, and they are, so another theme is the construction, design of new facilities and premium service expansion. In Capital Metro, their project is called Project Connect, and they are adding BRT lines, they're adding light rail lines or BRTs that will transition to light rail. And then lots of other agencies have advanced premium transit projects during the pandemic, a lot of BRT projects, including PSTA with our Sunrunner. Jacksonville not only opened a new BRT line during the pandemic, but also completed construction of its new headquarters and mobility hub known as the Jacksonville Regional Transportation Center. Next slide, please.
Wow.
And one area that we are way out in front of is our mobility services, including our first and last mile direct connect program and our mobility on demand program, which is now providing many what would previously been paratransit trips. And we are now providing them through this program on Uber and Lyft at a lower per trip cost than our Access paratransit. And from what I hear at the workshop, lots of the agencies, while some have implemented similar programs, they're still very interested in our programs, which have been running for many years. Next slide, please. And then just to wrap up, PSTA's participation in ABBG brings a lot of value, as I've shown today, in helping us understand and keep up with industry trends. I'll now turn it back to the chair for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Are there any questions or comments?
Nice. Do our Flamingo cards tap or just swipe?
They tap.
They tap too?
They tap, yeah.
Then they scan too. I mean, the app, it scans to the app, right?
Right now, the app is a QR code that you scan, but we are, I'm told, that it'll be transitioning to a tap.
Oh, really?
If you go to the, if you have like a mobile ticket at the Rays games now, you tap, and that's gonna go to that,
Yeah.
the near field thing.
Yeah, a tap works a little easier sometimes.
works
You have
easier.
to get that QR code lined up just right sometimes, or it don't.
But yeah, the glare and lighting can affect
The
that.
lighting on, how bright you have your screen sometimes messes up
Yeah,
the QR
that's why I
code.
was asking if it was a tap.
Yeah.
I like this. Do you think we'll ever go to the double-decker buses?
Oh, that is a pretty amazing vehicle right there. That is a double-decker electric bus.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
In Foothill Transit has those, in
Foothill.
California. It's pretty neat. I don't know.
And they've been the leaders in electric bus for quite a while, so
Yeah.
I guess now they're the first ones to get a double decker one.
Yeah, I know in DC, at one point they had the buses, which was kind of scary to me. They were like two big buses connected, and I call it the accordion in the middle.
Yes.
And I used to just get so scared when they'd be going, because if that light turned yellow, you just had to wait because the rest of the bus was coming. But it picked up additional people, but just that accordion piece, just so you're wavering on the back end. But the double deckers are pretty nice.
Yeah, those are actually Vince's favorite bus.
I like
The
that.
articulating.
The double decker
No,
or the
articulating.
accordion?
I like the articulating.
You like that? Oh, man.
He lives life on the
I
edge.
called a cab.
So, Heather, I did have a question. Under the performance indicators, there's CO2 emissions per passenger mile and per vehicle mile. Are there other indicators for other environmental impacts? Like, for example, using the Flamingo fares reduces our paper tickets and things like that. Are there other metrics on the environmental side as part of the benchmark group?
There are a few other, there's not a paper metric. There's actually, I feel like probably like 100 metrics you could look up. They have a graphing tool, but the ones I showed today are the ones
Ones that they put for every agency.
other environmental
Heather, you're breaking up.
metrics. We do have our sustainability, so it's not necessarily benchmarked with all these other agencies, but the sustainability program, we track water, electricity, recycling, and a host of other metrics. So we will be bringing you all an update on that in, I believe, January.
Okay.
So we're just ending our fiscal year. We just ended our fiscal year, and so we're going to be compiling all the data from last year and see how we did. It'll be kind of interesting because of the COVID impacts of us all not being in the office and lots of other things, but we will report out on that soon.
I appreciate that, because I think it's important that we continue to remind ourselves as well as the community the impacts that we're making in a positive way in all of the different metrics that we're using to be more sustainable and a better steward of our overall resources. So thank you.
Agreed.
And speaking of sustainability and better use of our resources, that transitions very nicely to our solar project update with BJ.
Good morning, Planning Committee.
Morning.
BJ Gavin, Project Engineer, Project Management Office. Every 2 minutes, the amount of energy reaching the Earth from the sun is equivalent to the whole annual usage of humanity. All the energy, all the cars, everything moving, the lighting, the air conditioning, in 1 year is equivalent to 2 minutes of sun. Does that change how you think about energy? Maybe you don't think about energy, but I bet you think about money. And once a month, when that power bill comes, the two intersect. The same thing happens at PSTA, except we have people that think about energy a lot. We have a planning department, project management office, operations and maintenance, and of course the executive office. I'm going to share with you how PSTA is going to stop paying for power, all while reducing carbon emissions, boosting PSTA's resiliency, and bolstering infrastructure serving the people of Pinellas County. How together, with the board leading the way, PSTA can embark on a future of sustainable energy. Slide. Back in January of this year, the PSTA board adopted the Sustainable Strategic Plan. And in that plan, we laid out the secret of this strategy. Slide. Solar photovoltaic panels. Slide. What we didn't lay out was our goal of 100% renewable electricity, renewable energy. Slide. Reduce energy costs, reduce carbon emissions, increase resiliency. Capturing solar energy allows us to reduce our energy costs. By using solar power, to power our buildings, we can reduce the energy bill down to 0. Now, there's another piece here that I haven't mentioned. What about the buses? What about the energy to power the buses? This presentation is not about buses, but of course, everything we do comes back to serving the people of Pinellas County, and we do that primarily through our bus service. Currently, we have 6 e-buses, 2 on order. These e-buses run on batteries, which get plugged in to our campus and charge at night. With solar here at PSTA, we could generate 100% of the renewable energy to charge those buses. We're working closely with operations and maintenance to plan a solar PV system to match energy forecasts as we increase our electric fleet. And as our e-bus fleet increases, we believe in having a solar array that can supply the energy needs for those buses. Buses are the biggest part of reducing the carbon emissions for PSTA, and a solar array can supply that energy needed for both the PSTA campus and all of our e-buses. Increasing resiliency is the third benefit of solar. So during normal operations, our plan would allow PSTA to be self-sustaining. But in the event of a natural disaster, a fully implemented solar PV array at PSTA would allow us to island our facility as its own microgrid, serving all of our power needs. How do we get there? This all starts with capturing the energy, storing the energy, and using the energy. And who knows more about that than Duke Energy? Past partnerships with Duke and PSTA include the depot chargers that power our current e-buses, the DC fast chargers out in our employee parking lot that can be used by PSTA staff or guests for their own electric vehicles, and then the wireless induction charging for en-route charging. PSTA is currently exploring a continued partnership as the agency looks to this 100% renewable energy future. And we would cement this partnership eventually with a master service agreement between Duke and PSTA. So what will this look like? Slide. Here you'll see our 36-acre campus, but something different than the regular aerial. You'll see all the blue here. And that blue is what solar panels would look like. We're focusing on 3 key areas. Slide. Area A is our administrations and operation building. So the solar panels here would be a roof install, so they'd be on top of the roofs of all those buildings. Slide. Area B here is our transit yard. Here our solar array would be elevated, either with multiple structures or a superstructure, targeting minimal to zero functional change in our transit yard. So that would be above the buses, so the buses would be able to operate as normal. Slide. And then our employee and guest parking lot here, Area C. Similar to the transit yard, elevated solar array here, although it would be lower, it would still be above the vehicles. Also, zero functional change for the parking lot. Slide. I hinted at something earlier and maybe left you wondering when I said our e-buses charge at night. And I hinted at it again between capturing the energy and using the energy, and it's storage. The sun only shines in the daytime. We need battery storage on campus. E-buses run all day while the sun is shining. We need to store that solar energy we're capturing to use later, at night, when we can charge all the buses back home at base. And it's buses, but it's anything that needs to happen on campus when the sun isn't shining. Battery storage is what allows us to use the batteries when we need the batteries. We had a very exciting visit with Duke Energy last week where we shared this vision of PSTA's 100% renewable energy future. They're assembling a proposal now on how they can partner with us so that we can achieve this goal. Meanwhile, we're looking at additional grant opportunities for project funding. So this is an information-only item on your agenda. However, in December or maybe January, we'll be back before you with an update. Slide. We look forward to answering any questions you have.
Commissioner Flowers.
I don't have any questions, I just have a super kudos. You know, this is fabulous, to be able to harness all of that electricity right here and to be able to utilize that, for the service provisions for our vehicles. I think this is fabulous. It moves towards the 100% renewable, goal that we're trying to reach. And, I just had this conversation yesterday with Barry Burton with the county about the county buildings and us, going solar for those county buildings and then providing, the energy that's captured from that to do our buildings. Now, I did find out that we have a building that's across the street off from our marketing where it generates some of the power that runs part of our campuses,
Oh,
but
right,
not
yeah.
all of our campuses. Because we have other buildings, you know, throughout. But that was a very good presentation, very informative, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm excited, you know, I'm excited. We're past the cutting edge, you know, we are the edge, so thank you.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Likewise.
You know, you're fine. Commissioner Albritton, you just turned that off.
You gotta push
Push
it
the button
again,
again?
babe. I did the same thing, yeah.
There
There
you
you go.
All the mics are hot right now.
Oh, that's what I thought, but I thought this turned green or
That was
something.
really neat. I made it so long.
You know, in Clearwater, we're talking about the same thing, and in fact, we're partnering with Duke as well for it seems like right now, we're in such a transitional phase, you know, and the solar panels as we know them now, the ROI is not, it's getting better, but the return on investment is long. But, you know, I know that they're coming out with some new, types of coatings over the photovoltaic cells instead of glass, because we got to get that from China. It's a thin spray-on coating that could be bendable, and, you know, and the solar panels now are like 22% efficient, and we're trying to get the efficiency up on that. But it's a great goal. And we gotta be, you know, if you wanna do that sometime in the near future, you need to start talking about it now, so I'm glad we are. And we have the size of a campus that we can really make a difference here. It's hard to do, you know, on a smaller building to say, oh, we're gonna put photos, you know, we're gonna put solar cells on top and it'll reduce. You gotta have something big. And putting it over the parking areas and, you know, is a good solution. I like what they did at the pier in St. Pete. I mean, that was a great, and not only just to renew the power and put power back in the grid, but to show the public what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's almost a bigger success than actual the power you get off of it. So kudos to you. I'm glad we're talking about this now. I know batteries are the same thing. Batteries are being developed now, where maybe solid state batteries much better than the batteries that we have. And so maybe by the time we get into implementation on this, that it'll be a lot, you know, better.
Yeah, we hope so, and that's part of what we're asking Duke and working with our finance department to understand what's the break even look like, and so it's for we don't have those numbers yet, but 15, 20 years, somewhere around there is what we're looking at. So it does get baked into that, but certainly the technology is always progressing. The batteries are getting better, and the solar is getting better. So we're going to explore that, what that looks like.
Vince? Nope. Oh, so I appreciate the presentation. I've been talking to Brad about this since I joined the board in 2017. So this is great to see. Even things like just having the solar panels as coverings for vehicles will help extend the life of the vehicles, will help reduce cooling costs. So, and I also understand the batteries are a very expensive and dynamic environment as far as how those work and how they can supply us power when we need it. I want to make sure that when we are looking at the finances, that there isn't just the straight financial picture of this is what we were paying, this is what we are paying now. We need to make sure we're adding in the impact costs to the environment. We need to make sure that we're giving ourselves credit for that sustainability, for that resiliency, where we would have other costs if we didn't do that, right? So there are other things that need to be factored in when we're looking at it. I was reading a report. There was a bid out in California on, I think it was California, on a nuclear plant, and versus solar panels, and the solar panels came in actually cheaper at this point than per kilowatt hour. It was, I think, 2.6 cents versus 3 cents per kilowatt hour for nuclear, and honestly, and it may have been Europe, as far as I know at this point, now that I think about it. But that was amazing to me, to see the shift that we've had in those pure financial numbers, but we oftentimes forget the other impact numbers that are a tremendous cost. And I know, sitting on the finance committee, I'm going to be very interested, though, to see how the deal works out with Duke, and how we're working with them and what they're getting from that. The current plan, you said it's to have 100% of our current power. Is it just 100%, or are we anticipating 110, 115, 20?
Yeah, we believe that the amount of energy from a fully executed solar array, we believe that we would be taking in power and getting a credit for that. I mean, that's the intent. That's what we've asked Duke to tell us and show us, and we've shared with them what our current energy usage. We're understanding what future e-buses, as we add those buses, as I mentioned, talking with ops and maintenance. Okay, we add 10 e-buses. What does that look like on the system? So Duke Energy should come back with that understanding. But we believe, I mean, like Commissioner Albritton mentioned, we've got this huge footprint. And so, the Sunshine State, the Sunshine City, we're taking in all of that sun, and so can we leverage it? And to your point, Commissioner Schulman, there's the hard finances of it, but there are some other things that we looked at as well, and you alluded to it, the thermal load on the buses. So the buses would be shaded. We're capturing the sun above it, but those buses, when they start up, they don't have to power up that air conditioning as hard. So how do you calculate that? I mean, we're not going to do that kind of deep dive, but we understand that. And then there's also the comfort factor. Comfort factor for our operators. It's a huge lot to walk out to your bus. If we can shade them from sun and rain, it's an added benefit that doesn't get baked into the real numbers. So we're certainly acknowledging those things, but the numbers that's the easiest thing to translate.
Well, and sometimes the hard things that are to calculate are also the more valuable. That's what makes them hard. So I would encourage, when looking at that, like, we can figure out how much energy does it take to cool a bus down from a sitting rate of 100 degrees down to 70. Versus shaded, it's at 85 degrees to 70. So we can calculate that. But I also want to make sure that we're cognizant of the fact of how valuable this property is to Duke. Not only its large footprint, its proximity to distribution. Right, we have the waste to energy plant right here. It is a great spot to produce energy for Duke. So they are getting a tremendous value as well out of this partnership. So I want to make sure that we're cognizant of that going into it, that it's we're not just getting from them, we're going to be giving some love back to them as well.
We've got the power position, pardon the pun.
We're going to invite you to the negotiation session with Duke.
You may regret saying that. So I appreciate any additional, Commissioner Cox?
No, I have no more on this.
Oh.
Thank you. I did have a comment after we're done with BJ, and that's very good, BJ. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. We
Thank
look
you.
forward to hearing more
Yay.
at our next meeting.
At first, I thought we were gonna have a test when he started out with that question. I was like, I am not prepared.
You didn't get the study materials ahead of time?
Oh, but the
No,
sun,
and I was
solar
gonna get a
system.
0 on that one.
Josh, I just have one comment.
All right, Commissioner Cox?
Just to let you all know that I was reappointed to this board by the Pinellas County Commission by a vote of 6-1, which I was delighted for. And I thank you for your support. My commissioner, Renee Flower.
Certainly, my pleasure.
And our chair, I believe, was also
Yes.
reappointed by the city.
And
Yes.
Commissioner Fig Sanders was reappointed
Yes,
at the city
yes.
level. So
Oh, good. Oh, congratulations.
All right, all right.
we're keeping the band together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, is there any additional business or any additional comments? No?
Good meeting.
All right, thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Yeah, I'm going to my,
Girl,
I'm so retired. Look, I put the thing in and never plugged it.
Get Danica on the phone.
Just barely can get it on an Android device. It keeps dying on me whenever I try to use it.
Never plugged it up.
See all those bus companies. Take care, David.
Hey, guys.
Lord, too.
How about carbon?